I'm Lydia Edwards here with Robert Owens, a Smoothie King franchise owner and someone who I worked under for my entire high school career. So, Mr. Owens, let's first talk about your education. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And what degree did you graduate with?
Sure. Okay, so I grew up in Hillsboro, Illinois, which is a small town north of St. Louis, northeast. And then I went to school originally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to Oral Roberts University. Went there for 3 years. And then I transferred to Greenville College in Greenville, Illinois, for my last year. And I finished school there with a bachelor's in business administration. And then I later went to a tech school in Florida to become a sound engineer. So I got a technical degree in sound recording at a place called Full Sail Center for the Recording Arts. And that led me down a different path.
Right. So, what was your first goal? Like, what did you want to do first when you graduated college? What was your dream career?
Well, to be honest, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I graduated from college. That was one of the reasons I got a business degree, because I figured that was a good general degree to have, that you would be able to apply to a lot of different areas. So that was why I got that. My first job out of college was working for Ford Motor Credit Corporation in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was in the collections department, unfortunately, which wasn't much fun. And I did that for about a year and a half, and I became fairly disillusioned with that situation, so I left. And then I decided to start going back to school to get into music, so I started going to Tulsa Junior College to study music theory and, try to find a way to get into the recording side of the music industry. So at the same time, to support myself while I was doing that, I started waiting tables. And thus began my career in the restaurant business. And so then, fast forward a few years, I ended up in Denver. I attended the University of Colorado at Denver for a couple of semesters, again pursuing this education in music and sound engineering. That led to me going to Florida to a tech school called Full Sail Center for the Recording Arts, which then took me to Los Angeles, where I worked in a recording studio for about a year as a runner, which was the term that they used in 1990, but it was basically a gopher was the job, because they just said go for this and go for that. That's where that term came from. So I did that, decided I wasn't going to stay in Los Angeles. It wasn't really for me, so I came back to the Midwest, was trying to figure out my next move, and ended up getting a job with California Pizza Kitchen in the St. Louis area, and then also worked up in Chicago for a while for them, and went into restaurant management. And so then I did that for a few years. And then I ended up as a salesperson for a company called Hunter Douglas, which manufactured window shades. And so I was a sales rep for them for about 11 or 12 years.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, completely different industry.
Right.
So I had to learn learn about a new industry and a new product. And I did that until I got downsized, ultimately. When the company made some changes and bought out another company and so on and so forth. So that's kind of what led me, in a crooked path to where I ended up, which was becoming a Smoothie King franchisee.
Right. So other than the downsizing of your company, what else would you say motivated you to become a franchisee, and why Smoothie King?
Well, I would say mainly because at the age I was at the time that I was downsized, it was, becoming harder to find employment because, people wanted to hire younger individuals. Mm-hmm. At least it appeared that way in the field I was in. So I started looking for other possibilities and opportunities, and kind of stumbled upon Smoothie King which wasn't as well known at the time. This was in 2013. But a former client of mine in my previous job had introduced me to Smoothie King, and I really liked the product. And I thought that the market in the St. Louis area was underserved because there weren't that many of them at the time. So I happened to go to a Smoothie King one day, and I looked at the front door when I came out, and there was a number, and it said, "For franchise opportunities, call this number." So I called them. I thought, that makes sense. What have I got to lose? So I called them, and they said, "We are going to be in St. Louis in 2 weeks to do a presentation, so you should come to that."
Oh my gosh, it was fate.
Yeah, so I signed up, and I went to the presentation, and I was hooked on the idea, and so kind of, stumbled onto a business partner by accident on the way, and he said he would be interested in investing if I was serious about doing it. So we got together and decided to do it. So we bought a franchise and then opened our first Smoothie King store in 2014.
Wow. So this person who invested with you, you just met them at the seminar, or?
No, actually, I had known him from a men's group at church where my daughter went to preschool. And then also our daughters went to a gymnastics class together. So one evening we were both at the gymnastics class, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I told him I'm thinking about maybe buying a Smoothie King franchise. And he said, "Okay, really? That's interesting. And, I might be interested in getting in on that with you." So I didn't know if he was serious. I didn't know him that well at the time. But anyway, I contacted him a few weeks later, and he said, "Yeah, let's get together and talk about it." So that's how it happened, and he was interested and serious about it too. So we got together and formed a company and went ahead and bought the franchise.
Yeah. So obviously it would be a lot easier to convince someone to invest with you on a company that already has a consumer base and is already pretty well known. Did that give you a lot more confidence when opening a franchise versus starting your own business from the ground up?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, there's a number of reasons that I've told people in the past when they've asked me about Smoothie King as a franchise. One of the reasons that you buy a franchise is exactly like you've hinted at, is that what you're buying is a brand that's already established, and a system and a product that has a proven track record. Okay, so as opposed to just opening up your own smoothie shop with no brand recognition and no name recognition, that's a lot harder to pull off and be successful at. When you buy a franchise, they have everything in place already. They tell you, this is what color the walls are going to get painted, and this is the tile you're going to put down on the floor, and these are the vendors that you're going to order all your countertops and light fixtures from. It's all, it's pretty turnkey, as we would call it. So, the hardest part, or the longest part of that, is just really finding the real estate and the location. And once you do that and get that done, then the franchise kind of feeds you all this other stuff that's going to happen next.
Yeah.
So that was, that's beneficial. And so you can, once you get the location established, you can get everything up and running in 60 to 90 days. So it's a pretty quick transition.
So would you say that you think anyone could be a franchisee or entrepreneur, I guess, but franchisee more specifically, considering that's what you do?
I don't know that it's for everyone, no. People don't realize, owning your own business, they don't really realize how much of a commitment that is, I don't think. And I don't think there's any way for you to realize that until you actually take the plunge and get into it. And then you realize it's 7 days a week. In the beginning, I had to spend a lot of hours at the store until I got a real handle on the systems. And, not, like I said, most of it is, is already there and in place, but there are definitely some aspects of the business that you've got to kind of figure out and tailor to your particular location.
Yeah.
And so it takes a little while to even with all of that, already set for you or set up, you still have to figure some things out.
Right. Okay, so would you say that you think you have a typical entrepreneur personality?
Probably not. I would say that I became an entrepreneur, or at least in the sense of, I don't know that I believe that being a franchisee is exactly the same thing as being an entrepreneur. It's not like an Elon Musk type of entrepreneur, right?
Certainly in the same category.
Yeah, because I think of, a real entrepreneur as somebody that actually comes up with an idea or a product or something that they have created and then developed and, brought to market, as opposed to a franchisee where you're basically adopting somebody else's product and promoting and selling it. So, yeah, what was I supposed to be? I forgot the question. Where did we start?
If you have the typical entrepreneur personality.
Oh, right, yeah. No, so I don't know that I would say that I do, because it was definitely later in life, and I'd been through several other, jobs and careers and industries before I landed on this one. Although, my restaurant management experience was definitely relative, and my sales background. A lot of the things that I'd done previously lent themselves to, being successful at this, certainly. But yeah, I feel like it was out of necessity with just where I was in my life and with my career. And again, I latched on to Smoothie King because I felt like it was a good product. It's a healthy product, so I felt it was very timely when I got involved. And at the same time, I felt like it was, again, the St. Louis market where we was definitely underserved. So I felt like there was a lot of room for growth.
Yeah, there wasn't really many until...
No, there were only about 7 maybe in the St. Louis region in 2013 when we became a franchisee, and today I think there are somewhere between 25 and 30 stores in the St. Louis area. So I was definitely right about that, and a lot of people were thinking the same thing, because a lot of other people became franchisees shortly after we did and started opening up Smoothie Kings, and so the growth really took off from 2014 until now. It's really grown a lot more than it had, the previous 15 years that it had been around.
Yeah.
Or at least around in St. Louis. The company had been around about 40 years when we got involved.
Right. So obviously timing is really important in matters of failure or success when it comes to entrepreneurship or franchises in your case. And just with your obviously impeccable timing, what would you say would be other successes that you've had with your endeavors?
You mean Smoothie King?
Mm-hmm. Like, what are some pivotal points that marked that you'd made it with Smoothie King?
I would say the first 6 months was a little bit of a struggle and was a little tense because the business it did not take off at the location we were in immediately. We really had to build the business up, and it was probably sometime around 2000 and I would say the end of 2015, 2016, where I really felt like things were starting to, take off.
Yeah.
And I think that's because the brand recognition really had come up to a much greater level in this market because of the number of Smoothie King stores that had opened up.
Right.
Since we had started ours. So that helped to, just create more brand recognition in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. So people knew what the product was, which wasn't necessarily the case when we first opened. But Yeah, I just, I was able to hire some good people, and then we decided, a couple years into it to open a second location, which is in Springfield, Missouri. And we still own that one. We sold the original one we had in 2020, but we still have the store in Springfield. So we had two stores for a while, and it really comes down to the employees. I mean, you realize pretty quickly that in a retail environment like we're in, you have to have good employees to make it work.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yes, absolutely.
So would you say that wasn't the Smoothie King in Springfield the first one in Springfield?
Actually, no. There were two Smoothie King locations in Springfield. They had both closed. It was another individual who was a franchisee there opened them. I don't remember how long they were open, but they had been closed for probably 6 or 7 years prior to us opening ours.
So when it came to the Springfield location, did you feel like, since obviously you didn't have the same brand awareness that you had in St. Louis, did you feel like you had to work harder to bring in customers in Springfield versus St. Louis?
That's a great question, but not really, because when we opened the store in Springfield, it was around December of 2016, and what was going on in Springfield at the time, Springfield being the third largest city in the state, it had been growing, substantial growth going on down there, and particularly with Missouri State University. So what was going on there was there were a lot of kids at Missouri State who were from St. Louis or Kansas City areas, in particular. So they were very much familiar with Smoothie King as a brand.
Perfect.
And liked it. Yeah. So we immediately saw, when we opened, we had a good response down there. And then also because, there had been a couple of Smoothie Kings in Springfield before.
Right.
And so there were a certain amount of people in Springfield who remembered Smoothie King from when it had been there before. And they showed up right away. So right out of the gate, the Springfield store was more successful than the first store we opened.
Right.
It didn't take as long to establish ourselves there.
So even opening in the winter, you found that smoothie sales were still doing pretty
Right,
good?
right. Even though, because, yes, the product is somewhat seasonal, and of course December through February are going to be the slowest months of the year for the product. But no, we had a good response when we opened in December, and I don't recall if I'm sure business dropped off a little bit in January and February just because of the weather, like it always does. But overall, it was pretty steady from the get-go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the nice thing about Smoothie King is that it's not just drinks. It's protein options, meal supplements, all these things that are options that keep people coming year-round, I would think.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely the healthy, the fitness aspect to it. Brings people in where they're not just looking for a cold drink on a hot day necessarily.
Right.
Like you said, we've got a lot of smoothies that have a high protein content, so that attracts people who are like to work out and trying to put on weight or add muscle or whatever. Just on a nutritional.
All varieties of people.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what would you say some of your biggest challenges were with opening the franchise? Like you said, the St. Louis store was kind of a slow start.
Yeah, that was, I think the challenge there, again, was just with the location we were in and the brand recognition in St. Louis at the time not being that great. So that was a challenge. We tried different things, tried local marketing and the typical, coupons and mailers and so forth to try to bring people in from around the area. And we did some things that were successful. We worked with the Smoothie King marketing team, who had some ideas about what to do. And, so we did some promotions in the area, which brought in more traffic. But the challenge is probably, first of all, you have to learn how to, accurately do inventory so you can figure out how to accurately order the product and predict what your sales trends are going to be, so you know how much product you need. And then you also have to figure out your staffing situation, so when are the peak times that you're going to need more staff and how to schedule and so forth. So that's not necessarily, you don't learn all of this stuff in the training. The training program is relatively short, or was at the time. It was about 2 weeks.
Right.
Total training.
You just kind of have to figure it out.
Yeah,
as
it's
you're
a
going.
lot of it is on the job training, right?
Right.
So you have to. So that's kind of a challenge, and you just have to get in there and be there every day for a certain amount of time until you figure all of that out.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds like quite the commitment. So what are your habits you use for success that you would say make you the most successful?
Well, I would say, for me, I like to be hands-on. So I always, from day one, I wanted to be there. I wanted to know what the job entails, what has to get done to make it, to make the customers happy with the product and keep them coming back. So I've, from the beginning, I've done every job that anybody else would have to do as an employee. So I knew,
Right.
When I hired them, I knew what the expectations were going to be, and I could figure out if I thought they were going to, be a good fit for the position and were going to last. And so, having done all of that, that helped me, I think, to find some good employees, because I kind of knew the personality type that we needed.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure being so hands-on helped build relationships with your customers. Probably
Yes.
gave it a very mom and pop kind of feel, knowing that they could talk to the owner and
Absolutely.
make nice
Yeah,
with you.
I do think that's important when people come in, customers come in, if they see somebody as an owner who they believe, cares about, the product and,
Right.
and the service and everything that goes with it, then, they respond to that, and they will, favorably, and they will come back typically.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I was able to, and being there a lot, I was able to make some, relationships with a lot of the customers and get to know them some of them on first name basis,
Mm-hmm.
if they came in regularly. And so that goes a long way.
Right. Any other tools for success you would say that helped you become who you are?
I just think, work ethic, my dad had a great work ethic, and he was always very positive, and it just always seemed like he believed he could do anything that he set his mind to, and he did a lot. He accomplished a lot in his lifetime. So I always looked at him as a role model and felt like, there is no substitute for hard work. You just got to get in there and roll your sleeves up and say, I can do this, or I'm going to figure out how to get it done one way or the other. And you just do it.
Right.
Until it becomes, and it's at a certain point, it becomes pretty easy. Once you've kind of got it figured out, and, you know the best way to do things, and you've got your own way of doing them, but also, you know the right way to do it.
Right.
And then it just becomes a lot easier.
Okay. So, do you have any advice that you would give to anyone who wants to either start their own business from the ground up, or maybe invest in franchises like you did?
Yeah, I would say, you do your due diligence when you're researching a product or a company that you feel like you might want to get involved in. There's only so much information that you can really get before you dive in. So you have to do your due diligence, you have to do your research, but at some point you have to make the decision, I'm pretty certain that this is for me, and this is going to be a good thing, and then you have to go in 110% with it, because like I said before, you're going to learn a lot after you open the doors that you didn't know,
Right.
from doing your research. There's a lot of things you're going to find out after the fact, and you just have to be flexible, and you have to roll with that, and realize, okay, I didn't necessarily plan on this. I didn't know this was going to work this way, but I'm in it. I'm committed to it. And that's the other thing about a franchise that people have to understand is it's when you sign a franchise agreement. In our case, it was a 10-year commitment to become a franchise.
Oh, wow.
So it's not something that you want to take lightly because it's a pretty long-term commitment.
Right. So that they would just hold you accountable to open your own stores for 10 years, one and done, or as many as you want.
Well, it depends. Yeah, you can make different deals to do. You can open an individual store. You can negotiate a deal to open multiple units in a territory.
Okay.
And so there's different rules and guidelines that go along with each version of that. Mm-hmm. But if you just do one store, it's a 10-year franchise commitment. So you've either got to decide I'm in it for 10 years, or potentially like we did with our first store, we owned it for I think 6 years and then we sold it.
Okay.
So that's the other option. If you,
So you
don't
can
want
just
to
sell.
finish out the 10-year commitment, you can sell it.
Okay.
But that's not always, depends on the economy and a lot of other things as to how easy it's going to be, to accomplish selling a business.
Right.
And again, I would say to people, it's when you get into a franchise, when you go to sell it, it's not like you're gonna double your money when you sell it.
Really?
Right. Which, that would not be the case if you were to develop your own product, okay, which obviously is a lot more challenging. The obvious payoff there is that if you did decide to sell your company, it would be worth a lot more,
Right.
Provided that it was a successful company, a successful product. But that would definitely be one of the benefits of starting your own company.
Right.
But I think you have to be passionate about the product. I felt that Smoothie King's product was a good product, and I felt good about selling it because it's a healthy and nutritious product. So
Right.
I think that those things are important too.
Mm-hmm. Right. And would you say that the St. Louis store, would you say that you sold that in only 6 years because of the location? I know you guys didn't think that the location was necessarily the best. Did you feel like you didn't do either enough research when it came to location, or when it came to like finding a location for your franchise, is it more just about the available real estate? And considering that the product is something like smoothies, where it's like you're not necessarily looking for a certain demographic, I guess, would you say it's more about the real estate in that case then?
Yeah, it is, and it's not like you can just pick the real estate that you want because it's not necessarily available. And the other thing with a franchise agreement is that you're on a timeline.
Oh, yeah.
So when you sign up as a franchise, you have, I believe it's 1 year to get the store open. So you have to find the real estate. Like I said, once you've signed a lease and have the location, the construction and getting the equipment set up and everything else, that can go pretty quickly. That can all get done in 60 to 90 days and you can be open. But finding the real estate is really the hardest part. And so, I think that the location we found, it turned out to be a good location. We were able to build the business and make it a profitable location. I don't feel like that was an issue, but the location wasn't necessarily where we thought we were going to go in the beginning. Mm-hmm. It just happened to be a location that was available.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Owens. Good to see you again, and thank you so much for doing this interview with me and for your time.
You're welcome.